A trade deadline deal for Kevin Durant was nothing short of a fantasy for the Minnesota Timberwolves, but new reports suggest that the Wolves' interest in the future Hall of Famer was very real. Despite the seemingly impossible cap restrictions at the time, Minnesota made an aggressive push for Durant during the 2024-25 season, a move that would have had seismic implications for the franchise. And with the offseason now underway, those same rules that once stood in the way of a blockbuster trade might have just cleared the runway for a summer move. In a recent episode of ESPN's Hoop Collective podcast, insider Brian Windhorst dropped a bombshell. The Timberwolves were absolutely serious about landing Durant at the trade deadline. It became clear to me in talking to the parties involved just how serious the Wolves were about trying to trade for Kevin Durant at the trade deadline. Windhorst revealed, "This may not be the first time we've heard whispers of Minnesota's interest, but Windhorst's confirmation adds a level of gravity to the claim, suggesting that the Timberwolves weren't just casually entertaining the idea, they were actively looking to pull the trigger. But despite the intensity of Minnesota's pursuit, a deal was ultimately impossible due to the league's cap rules, which heavily restricted trade negotiations between teams above the second apron, a tax bracket designed to limit spending for high-spending teams. Both the Phoenix Suns and the Timberwolves were above this threshold during the season, creating a massive roadblock for any potential Durant to Minnesota swap. In fact, the trade rules during the season made the prospect of such a move nearly unthinkable. Cap rules nearly ruined Timberwolves' pursuit of Durant first. There's the hard cap rule. If a team takes on more salary than it sends out in a trade, it is automatically hard capped at the first apron, the league's lower salary threshold. With both teams above the second apron, the Timberwolves and Suns would have been forced to navigate a financial minefield that neither team was equipped to handle. The challenge wasn't just a matter of finding the right players to match salaries. Both teams had already traded away many of their future draft picks, leaving them with few options for sweetening the pot with additional assets or third-team facilitators. Then, there's the rule about aggregating salaries. If a team tries to combine several player salaries to make the deal work, they are hard capped at the second apron. In simpler terms, Minnesota couldn't have used multiple players to match Durant's massive salary unless they somehow managed to shed enough money to dip below the second apron in the process. Given that only a handful of teams had the cap space to take on such a deal, the Timberwolves were left with few options to maneuver. In short, the rules made a Durant trade nearly impossible for any second apron teams, with the only potential workaround requiring extreme creativity and luck. One potential trade centerpiece could be Rudy Gobert, the two-time Defensive Player of the Year who still commands plenty of value despite his mixed tenure in Minnesota. If Gobert were included, it could serve as a salary-matching piece, especially if the Wolves offered up other players like Julius Randle, who could opt into the final year of his deal and possibly extend his contract with the Suns, or even some of their younger prospects like Rob Dillingham, Terrence Shannon, or Jalen Clark. Then, there's the number, 17th pick in the 2025 draft, which could sweeten the pot, especially given that Phoenix is looking to retool around Durant and Devin Booker. Throw in a few more role players, and you've got the makings of a trade that could entice Phoenix. And then there's the personal factor. Anthony Edwards, Minnesota's rising star, has long cited Kevin Durant as his idol. A chance to play alongside Durant could be a game changer for the Timberwolves, especially given Edwards' growing stardom and leadership potential. Durant's presence would instantly elevate the Wolves, making them a much more serious contender in the Western Conference. With everything now in place for a potential trade, it's clear that Minnesota's pursuit of Durant could be even more aggressive this summer than it was during the season. The Timberwolves have the ambition, the assets, and the cap flexibility to make this happen. Now, all they need is the right deal to push them over the top. The question is, will they be able to convince Phoenix to pull the trigger and give Durant the fresh start he's been seeking?